What was the worst job interview you've had? At an interview for a tech startup, they asked me, if you could be any animal, what would you be? Quote,
I answered, otter, because you know. Fun.
Active, work well with their hands and cute as fuck. They really debated whether or not to hire me because of that answer because, and I quote, we only hire predators,
never prey. And they weren't sure how to quantify an otter,
because none of them had ever paid the least bit of attention to any sort of animal documentary or read biology or visited a zoo recently. God, that job sucked hard. Was invited for an IT helper position when I was 17. Would help fix computers for people at a shoddy PC fix shop. They asked me, what's the first thing you check if a customer calls and says their screen doesn't turn on? Quote, I said, well, you gotta check if they have it plugged into a socket. They laughed and said thank you, that will be it. Then led me to the door and gently pushed me out.
I drove 2 hours for the interview.
Got there and the interviewer was off sick and hadn't told anyone about me coming in. Got back in my car and drove the 2 hours home.
Withdrew my name from consideration.
My first interview ever was at DQ and I accidentally knocked a 90-year-old woman over. I drove an hour to the interview for a computer repair tech job at a rental company. And 3/4 of the way through the interview they told me I was perfect for the position. However, they recently removed the position altogether. They then asked if I'd be willing to repair furniture instead until the position opened again. 5 interview rounds, with the last interview round being with the CEO, all for an entry-level customer service job. During the last interview, the CEO said you weren't allowed to get sick, and you weren't allowed to leave at the end of the day until all of the work had been done. So even though the job was 8 to 4, the CEO said customer service reps often stayed until 6 p.m. or later. She also asked if I would be comfortable secretly reporting to her about what the customer service team is up to. I declined the job offer and the company harassed me with emails asking why and what they did wrong. Really glad I didn't take the job. Job was for a vibration analysis engineer. I knew how to do the job well. I knew the pay should be around $95K, and they stated $55K in the interview.
When I tried to discuss my point,
they said, don't worry, there's plenty of overtime. They also mentioned since they weren't involved with many balancings at the moment, I would assist the cleaning crew with a lot of the cleanings. I've never been so uninterested in a job in my life. Not that bad, but I remember Taco Bell asked me what type animal I would be if I could be anything. Like, WTF do you want me to say? I would be a fire ant so I could work efficiently with my closest friends. 16-year-old me said an eagle, because they're strong and they can fly. Meh. In a group interview,
the interviewer crossed a line through my name on the list he had after I told him what I graduated in. This was within the first 5 minutes of a 40-minute meeting. An agency sent me for an interview and said, the starting salary is £33,000.
The interview went fairly well until the interviewer said, so what sort of salary are you looking for? So using the info I had from the agency, I said, well, I think £33,000 is a fair starting point. The interviewer practically threw me out. He started to shout about wasting his time because I expected to be paid a huge salary and he did. I think I was. He was paying £20,000. When he said I'll give you extra hours if you bring me smokes every day. Then put his hand on my leg and said his wife gives him passes to have fun. I also got a speeding ticket on the way to the interview. It was not my money. An interviewer told me that he worried I would be sexually harassed if I joined his team. Red flag. I interviewed for a project management position. The interviewer describes the job. Basically, it was pure research and data entry of potential clients, then cold calling them and documenting the results. The job ad mentioned exactly none of this but was an average project manager job ad. Else I wouldn't have applied in the first place. I asked what exactly was the project manager's part, and got told that not would, be down the road, maybe 2 to 5 years in, but really only maybe. I thanked them for the interview opportunity. We wrapped things up and I politely left. Showed up looking good in my paper with knowledge on Capital Partners. It turned out I had researched the wrong company named Capital Partners. Had a phone interview and the woman kept asking more and more intrusive questions. Kept hinting I'm a total piece of shit who's totally unfit for the job. It was the easiest job description ever, and jumping to conclusions about my life that were completely untrue. For example, I found out that being a freelancer who gets a lot of decently paid work each month is apparently living off my parents. She kept going on and on like that for quite a while before I told her to piss off and hung up.
Didn't really need that job too badly, but it was in a different country, so the travel aspect was
the main reason. Years later I found out it was stress interview, which apparently is a thing. Fuck those people. Deleted. I went in to apply for an administrative assistant position and the guy kept asking me questions about liking kids and if my passport's up to date, etc. I was so confused.
Turns out what he really wanted was a nanny for his 2 young kids to travel with him and his wife.
Back to India. I was so pissed he wasted my time. I know I'd right the fuck out of there. I had an interview with DMC back in the day. I don't remember the specifics other than I was really nervous. I had it. We're sorry to inform you. Email waiting for me before I finished the 10-minute trip home. At an interview to be a county street sweeper, guy asks me if I have a girlfriend. Proceeds to rant for 5 minutes how young people don't get married anymore. Then he asks me what I want to avoid at the job.
At the time I had no idea how to answer as I'd never been asked that in an interview before.
So I asked him to clarify, to which he just repeats the question over and over until he gets super angry that I don't know how to answer that. Then asks me to leave. To this day, biggest WTF interview I've had. I was the only person that hour was able to source for a role and I still got rejected. Sad face.
I was interviewing for a job in Houston
and lived in Austin, about 2.5 hours away. I drove to Houston for the first round of interviews, and they said it went well and wanted to bring me in for a final interview. So I drove there again. It seemed like it went well and they told me they had one more interview to conduct and would have a decision tomorrow. So the next day came and went. I emailed the manager to ask if any decision had been made. Nothing. Waited a couple more days. Left a voicemail. Nothing. Then a couple days later, I just called the main number for the company and told the receptionist why I was calling. She was like, well, someone just started in that job yesterday. They ghosted me after I drove a total of 10 hours to interview twice. Still salty about that 11 years later. I interviewed for what was my dream job, something that I have a ton of experience in and 2 degrees, including one from literally the most prestigious school in my field. They liked me so much in my first few rounds of interviews that they asked me to fly across the
country for the final one.
So I go through easily the worst travel day of my life.
Arrive for my interview.
And the interviewer takes one look at my resume and says, I don't know why you came all the way out here.
You aren't qualified for this.
Suffice to say I will never work there. Had an interview. Went well. I was offering the job on the spot and accepted. The HR manager went to get the needed paperwork. Came back 10 minutes later and said, I must have forgot that we already filled this position. I'm sorry, but we don't have an opening. I could call you if something opens back up. I said no thank you.